Channel 11 presents Talk It Over. Here's your host, Ellen Adelstein.
Hi, welcome to Talk It Over. And my guest today is Eleanor Smeal, who is the national president of NOW. Welcome, Ellie.
Thank you very much.
What does NOW stand for?
It stands for the National Organization for Women. We're a membership organization. We have over 70,000 members and 725 chapters. We have both male and female members. And our purpose is quite a simple one, really. It's for bringing about a condition of equality between the sexes in our country. And we're working in many, many fields, fighting for the rights of women, but also parity and equity between the sexes.
So then your organization, could it be classified as a feminist organization?
Yes. And a lot of people feel that feminism means, pro-woman and maybe anti-male, or something that is only for women. And really what the word feminist means in the dictionary is equality between the sexes. And really what we're fighting for is a system of justice.
How big is your organization in terms of dollars?
Our budget for 77, our income for 77 was approximately 1.4 million. And we anticipate that 77 will be a bigger year.
Where does that money come from?
Membership dues. By and large, it's the overwhelming percentage of our budget. Our dues are $15 a year. We have poverty dues if you can't afford that, because what we're interested in is having a membership of people who believe in the goals of partnership between men and women. And we have some contributions too, especially earmark contributions for some of our issues.
Do you have any idea how many male members you have?
We estimate about 15% of our organization is male. We don't really have hard statistics. One thing that we notice is that more of our leadership, they're becoming more active, the males that are involved, and we have some chapter presidents and state board members, people who are at various levels of activity. And we encourage any person that is interested in bringing about women's rights in a situation of equality. And of course, men have a lot to gain from a system of fairness.
Okay, let's take time out for a commercial, and we'll be right back, and we'll find out more about Eleanor Smeal and who she is and how she became president of NOW.
Rian?
You're a new president, are you not?
Yes, I was elected in April of '77.
Tell us something about Ellie. Where did you come from? What kind of a background?
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh. I've lived in Pittsburgh, in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, for about the last 10, 11 years. I'm married, have 2 children, and I started in NOW in about 1970, August 26, 1970 to be exact. There was a big women's conference on celebration of women's right to vote. It was the 50th anniversary of that occasion. And we started gradually. I think one of the smartest things I did was that Charlie and I, my husband, and I started in NOW the same day. We've been active together, and he's been as active almost as I have in the organization, and we have made it, it is very important to us, the cause. And essentially what happened is we started very, very gradually on issues that we were interested in, and became more and more active as the days went on and the years went on.
How many children? You mentioned earlier.
I have 2 kids, ages 13 and 9, and really they're at a wonderful age right now, and they do understand what's happening and what we're doing, and they're taking part.
And how many days away from home does your presidency?
Well, this is a large amount of time from home. In fact, we debated it right up to almost the deadline for declaring running. You have to run for election, and it's a contested election. I had been the chair of the board of NOW. I had been first, as I said, a chapter president and a state president, and I eventually got on the national board and became the chair of the board. And the decision of whether or not to run was an important one for us, because we knew the traveling. So our headquarters are in Washington, and we live in Pittsburgh, and there would just be commuting back and forth between them. But we decided that really it was our duty to do it. I mean, both of us feel that this is an historical movement. It's something that you can't step back from when you have an opportunity to contribute so much. And I say that to an awful lot of people who are thinking about should they do something, for the women's rights movement. And if you look over the whole course of history, there's only been a very few times in it that there has been advancement for women. The last major fights were quite a few years ago. The Susan B. Anthony's and Elizabeth Cady Stanton's that brought us the right to vote are several generations back. And we're in an era now that there can be real achievement and real advancement. And we feel that you have to think of the future. And when I debated about, well, we're going to spend a lot of time from our children are very, very important years in their life, but yet they can learn so much from this, and they have. I mean, they know every state legislature that the Equal Rights Amendment is involved in. They have traveled, and we've gone to conferences, a lot of conferences together. They know now people throughout the country. So although in some ways it is a departure from what it would be a traditional lifestyle, it's a part of it, because you can't just, your community is more than just your home. It's the whole of it. And so they're getting a chance to get involved in that. So,
before your presidency of now, did you have a wage-paying job?
No, I was a housewife for 14 years. This is the first job that I've had that is paying. All the other jobs were volunteer.
And why does the presidency of now pay, where many other volunteer organizations are just that, volunteer?
I fought very hard for it, I'll be very frank. All these jobs never were paid before. The presidency wasn't paid either. And I'm the first president to be paid. This is the first set of officers. And the reason I feel so strongly that they should be is these are full-time jobs. There's no question about it. And I would like, the people who come after, the people who are currently serving, all of us, that we can recruit people who could come from all walks of life. When you have it wholly volunteer, it's a very elitist system. Only those who can afford it can participate. And in reality, we want the best. The women's movement deserves the best, and we deserve to have people who can put full time on it. So many of our decisions are made, at 3 o'clock in the morning because you've had a full other day's work doing other things. Now, we are also primarily a volunteer movement. There's no question about it. There's only 5 paid officers. The bulk of our people, 90% of them, are volunteers, all at the state level and the local levels. And that might have to remain for some time because there's just money. But, and we always will be a volunteer movement, and I really respect, that aspect of it. But there is no question that it takes so much that we should start paying some of these organizations. Why is it, now has a position of volunteerism that has been often misunderstood? Because what we've said on it is that, community work is very important, but women should not be expected always to be the givers in it at their own expense, because what we are doing is we're fooling ourselves. They cannot give fully because they have other demands. See, it's the old myth that the housewife isn't working, and therefore she has time for all, to give. Reality is the housewife does work, and all of her other contributions are in her off hours too. And so in reality, we're asking volunteers to do 2 jobs.
Speaking of the housewife, how do you feel personally, and what is the position of now regarding Social Security for the housewife?
Oh, we believe very, very strongly, and I testified before Congress in July and gave our position that Social Security should be in the individual's own name, that there should be individualized Social Security accounts. So I, as a housewife, would have an account, and my husband would. And they say, well, does that mean more money? That mean that you'd have to pay more? No. When you pay, half of it would go into his account and half of it would go into your account. But you would establish an account. And if something should happen to him...
Wait a minute. Let's back up there a second. Let's say that our husbands are working.
Yeah.
And let's say that they put $1,000 into their Social Security account through their employer, takes it out of their wages. Now, are you saying that that $1,000 should be split $500 apiece?
That actually what I'm saying is that it's more or less what would happen after the 20 years. If a woman is married currently it's 20 years, the new law will be 10 years, to the same person, you have a prorated advantage, benefits coming back. In other words, you could be divorced, but you still have a right to your former husband's benefits on the basis of the longevity of your marriage, and the basis of what his benefits would have been. Our strong feeling is that both pension plans and Social Security, that there should not be a dependent status, that in reality you have a right to a share of it, depending on the longevity of your marriage and the benefits of that particular plan. Incidentally, there's a practical solution to this. This is not just a dream. The Fraser-Keyes bill, which was introduced by Donald Fraser and Martha Keyes in the House, provides for individualized Social Security accounts so that there is a division. And but the whole philosophy behind it, really though, is that the homemaker is not a dependent. She is a partner, and that partnership should be realized.
Well, now, what would you say then to people who say, gee, I really agree that the homemaker should have Social Security, but if you split the husband's share, the Social Security system is already, we're told, in this far from bankruptcy, and within the next 10 years it will be in bankruptcy unless Congress bails it out. Now you're taking one account and splitting it into two. How do you accommodate that?
Well, it's the whole realization that that wasn't his alone. That's partly hers. See, what we have now in some pension plans and in Social Security is literally the breadwinner, the so-called breadwinner, because actually they're both, I believe, working, is in a winner-take-all position. In other words, if he's still with that person and now they are retired, they get 1.5. He gets half as much for his dependent, right? But say he should leave and she now is left alone and she has not been married to him for the period of time, she is literally without anything. Now that is simply not fair. She has been, part of her income, which is his income, it's their household income, has gone into that program. And that's, like there's a bill in Congress right now on pension plans for federal employees. Under the federal employee pension plan system, if you get divorced from your housewife now and you're divorced, you're 30 years of marriage, he takes the whole pension plan. You're left with nothing. But under a pension plan that is being introduced in Congress, if you're married 20 years, you get a prorated share of that plan. I happen to feel that it should go beneath 20 years. I mean, after all, if you're married to somebody for 19 years, you've been paying him a long time. You should have some rights. And that it should be prorated on the basis of the longevity of the marriage. And in fact, it should be recognized that that part of that is yours. It isn't all his. You were in a partnership. So there are some practical solutions to this, and they are being introduced, but we are only on the first steps, really, of guaranteeing homemakers some economic security. We are nowhere near the realization of that.
All right. Okay. Let's stop for a commercial, and we'll come back. And I want to ask you how you personally got involved in this issue of the homemakers and feminism. We'll be right back. Recently, there was an article on you in Ms. Magazine, and it traced your life, of course, and it stated that you spent a year in bed.
I did off and on. After my little girl was 10 months old, she was my second child, I slipped a disc in my back and frankly had a series of things. So I was in bed off and on, and really what happened to me was happened to so many women is that you try to get up before you're recovered, because I had at that time a 4-year-old and a 10-month-old and nobody to watch them. And childcare is so expensive when my husband, commutes to work, so he's gone nearly 11 hours a day. And I was supposed to stay flat in bed. Good luck, right? So I had 5 relapses. And it was to say a difficult year is an understatement. And I became an absolute, several things happened to me. I read a lot of feminist literature. I read a lot about the suffrage movement. And secondly, I became very, very much aware of some of the difficulties that women face, such as, and to me it's not rhetoric when I talk about disability insurance for homemakers. I mean, I will never forget when I asked the doctor, he said, it was right before Christmas, it was December 8th, I couldn't walk. I mean, there wasn't any decision to make, I could not walk. And he said, you know, I know you got a young baby, I know you have a little one. He talked to both my husband and myself, and he said, but you don't have any choice. You have to spend the next 2 months flat in bed. Or you're going to be, you know, your border maybe will be an invalid the rest of your life. And I think you're too young for whatever the operation that was needed. And I remember asking him, I said, you know, what do other people do? I said, because we couldn't find any child care. It was right before Christmas. We couldn't even get a babysitter. It was Panicsville. I mean, and my mother was not able to come. My mother's very good, but I think she was ill then. She's an older woman, and she happened to be ill at this particular time. And I said, you know, what do they do? And he said, I'll tell you what they do. They have a lot of relapses. And he said, I'm trying to tell you this very seriously. You can try. You know, you'll feel a little better after you're off it for a while, but it's at your own risk. And he said, I'm telling your husband this because it's at his own risk, you know. Well, those comments rang in my ears because, in fact, I did get up too soon several times because what do you do? And I started asking, you know, why aren't there insurance programs for women? Why isn't there disability insurance? And you know what they say? They say, well, how can we monitor it? How can we test it? And after all, you know, the attitude's there as if homemakers are sitting there watching television all day, you know, or the soap operas, and that they're not working and that they would cheat. Well, you monitor it the same way you'd monitor any disability plan. You know, you have a doctor's statement, you have a real live illness, and in reality, you need income to replace yourself. Because what I needed then was a chance to get back on my feet, to have somebody, you know, some income so that would help subsidize the child care and the home care. Now that's a real problem, and it's still not solved. You know, that was, my little girl now is 9 going on 10, and there is no difference in that situation today. So anyway, I think you get involved in the feminist movement by really your own personal experiences, and when you realize you can't solve these problems alone. These are societal problems, and they're real problems.
Because of your experience, what action is now taking to get a disability program for homemakers against the insurance companies? I know the insurance companies have fought bitterly.
These such well, the first step in anything like this is attitudinal changes. You know, it is a shame that we are still at the position where we must correct people when they say housewives, working women. You know, when you say working women, you immediately think of a person who's taking an income. You think of a housewife as not working. Well, of course she's working. And when you talk about, well, we want some economic security for housewives, they immediately will say, well, you know, she's doing it for love, for her family. Well, of course she is. But you might love your job, but you expect to be paid for it, right? You expect to have some security. And as a matter of fact, if you're a responsible adult, you need security for your children and for yourself. You don't want to have to end up on welfare. You don't want to have to, if there is a crisis, to be without. So the first thing is to change attitudes, that one, a housewife does work, she is making a contribution, and that in fact she should be honored more than just at Mother's Day. Secondly, that there should be some economic security. Thirdly, when she goes out in the job market, as she will probably do, the average homemaker eventually works for money in the marketplace. It is, you know, the average woman in the United States works 30 years in the marketplace of her life. The average man works 35, so it isn't very much difference. The work that she did as a housewife should be recognized as work experience. It should not be just put down there, you didn't work. You did work, and look at all you learned.
How about her work as a volunteer?
Absolutely. That should be given just as much credit as any other job, because that was living and that was working, and you did get experience. So we believe that these credits should be transferred. In addition to that, I feel very strongly that we must stop dividing women between homemakers and working women. So we are all working. Only the very rich have the luxury not to. And as a matter of fact, women who work for pay are also homemakers, because they're doing 2 jobs, just like the homemaker's doing 2 jobs. You know, I've got this theory that most women are doing 2 jobs, and most men, unfortunately, are still doing only 1. And what we got to do is make this a little more imbalanced. And you know, people say, how's a housewife doing 2 jobs? Well, what's happening is the housewife it's usually she's a woman that either has very small children, or she frequently has an older relative to nurse, or she frequently has a crisis in the family that has brought her back in. Maybe there's a sickness or an illness or a child that needs special attention right that minute. So she usually has more demanding, or she's very, very involved in the community and is therefore taking up the work of many other workers who are in the marketplace. In addition, the woman who's working in the marketplace for money is also a homemaker. So both sets of women have a lot in common. And when we divide them that way, we set them off against each other, and they get to fighting with each other rather than recognizing we all stand something to gain if there's equal pay for equal work and if there's more advantages for the homemaker.
Okay. All right. Let's take time out for another commercial message, and we'll be back with Eleanor Smeal. Has now been active in the political arena?
Yes, and we're getting an increase in, well, when I say yes, what we've done in the past is we've been active in issues because we have not been able to be active in political and because of tax reasons. Now we have formed a political action committee, a PAC, and we're going to get more involved in races because the political arena is a tool that women should be using more. In reality, if you can't just lobby by education alone. Frequently you have to change the people who are making the decisions. One, we need more women in office, very, very few, small percentage of women in office, and they have something to offer that's unique. And 2, there should be more feminists, people who believe in equality, and that can be a male or a female. So we want to work very, very hard in the political arena and are going to do that.
Have you picked certain people in certain states that you would like to see elected or not elected?
Well, we are very issue-oriented, obviously, and right now our #1 priority is the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, so yes, we would be looking as to pro and con on that. But we would be looking for people who really do want and do believe that women's rights is an important issue and have the imagination to and the courage, really, to fight for it. You know, so many women, too, are afraid to fight for it because they're afraid that if they do, they will be singled out. It's easier sometimes to go along. But, you know, this is really probably one of the most exciting human rights events and phenomena in our century. So we are trying to bring it alive in the political arena. And incidentally, we are doing not only well, we're taking some very hard targets. Feminists are, and I'm now speaking not just now, but the whole movement, and we're being very successful.
I see. Thank you so much, Eleanor Smeal, National President of the National Organization for Women, for spending this half hour with us. Be with me. In the coming weeks, we'll have a show with Lawrence Welk, so stay tuned in to Talk It Over.
You've been watching Talk It Over with your host, Ellen Adelstein. Join us every Friday at this same time for Talk It Over here on Channel 11. The preceding program was produced by Channel 11 News.